Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the PD16 Perspective. I'm your host, John Reid, and we'd like to thank you for joining us this week. And in this edition, we're going to talk about the Keys versus Spotsylvania County School Board hearing, the results of that hearing, and what we can learn about accountability and transparency with our elected officials. Also, we're going to be discussing in honor of Women's History Month, an issue that's often not talked about in an arena that women serve, but still dealing with discrimination. And finally, if you are a business located in the Fredericksburg area, we have some good news for you. Stay tuned, and we hope you enjoy. Last week, and many of you may have already read this on the Freelance Stars website, fredericksburg.com. Well, if you follow this show, we've been talking about the Keys versus Spotsylvania County School Board petition, and that's been filed by Makaila Keys, who is a sophomore at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. And what we've been talking about is what the case involves, and it talks about the Freedom of Information Act. And for those who may not understand what the Freedom of Information Act, the Freedom of Information Act is as follows. I'm going to read it here. Is when you can request either an electronic copy or a physical copy of records that are held in public meetings, like, for example, Board of County Supervisors meeting, or, for example, the school board. And that's kind of been the central issue here with this petition. There are other things in which you cannot request for a FOIA, which, for example, personal records, physical specimens, or things like blood samples and the like. But I want to really get back into the heart of this case. And what this case has been dealing with is the issue in which there was a closed meeting that was taking place by the chair of the school board, Kirk Twigg, and with several others who are with him as well, as the respondents, such as members Lisa Phelps, April Gillespie, the vice chair, and Reid, I hope not to mess his name up, Reid Abuzamel. And so they violated FOIA by following him into this closed session, a session that was not originally revealed to the public. And the results of this meeting ended up in the former superintendent, Baker, being fired. So that's what this petition is all about. Now, this past week, Judge John Martin from Westmoreland, he actually stepped in. The case was originally supposed to be on Thursday, but it got bumped to Friday because two of the other judges recused themselves. Interesting. And the fact they recused themselves because reasons we don't know. But the fact is, Martin basically ruled that those members did willfully violate acts of FOIA. So as a result, while most of the articles in the petition were denied, there are others that the judge were allowed. And the case is going to be the actual trial will be taking place on April the 20th. But I want to read from, because there were some things that happened during that hearing that really speaks to, number one, the power of standing up for what is right. And number two, the ability to hold elected officials accountable. During the hearing, the defense lawyer spoke and basically said that Keys did not have a standing. And I'm going to read this. His main argument was, and I quote, that Keys does not have a standing to bring a lawsuit against the board on the issue of the closed meeting, because the subject of the closed meeting did not affect her family, or her property. Now, here's the thing. When we talk about that, and in the language that was being used, this is almost no different than what you heard when it came to the Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, that it was trying to be very dismissive of this lawsuit and what Makaila was doing. And the point of the matter is this, is that no one, she does have a standing because, think about that in the language. When we think about lawsuits, a lot of it comes down to simply interpretation. One person's interpretation versus another person's interpretation of the law. But with Makaila, and he said that that this would not affect her in any way, shape, or form. But see, here's the thing, and this is what he and many members of the school board, and even those supporters of the school board, forget about. Students like Makaila Keys, people like Olivia Morse, who was a supporter, the student from Riverbend High School, who was a big supporter of Makaila Keys, and we talked with her afterwards, and how it impacts them. They go to school, they see the online bullying. You can go on to some of these sites that have been put up by some students, and some of the things that's been said about Makaila, and a lot of it was very racially motivated, and that things they've said against her and other members, members of the family that are in the community, like I said, people like Olivia Morris who have to go to school, and they think and forget about these things because they're not connected to it. They present their cases, they go to the school board meetings, they can go to their other jobs and be with their families, and they're far removed from that situation. But see, these students, they are impacted. And so this is why it was so important for them to have this hearing and for it to go to trial, which it will finally, that there's some level of justice. And even going deeper into that, when talking about these closed sessions, and when we read this other part too, this is something that Frederick Edwards, Edwards Law for PLLC, who is representing the Keys family in this case, he said that FOIA is to be, quote, liberally construed to promote and increase awareness by all persons of government activities and afford every opportunity to citizens to witness the operations of government. I want to read that last statement again and why that's so apropos, that it affords every opportunity for citizens to witness the operations of government. Our government is in function for two reasons. Number one, to protect us from evil and to maintain social order. That said, what you hear from the hearings this past week was that government is to serve the people. They are elected by the people. They are to serve in the best interest of the people. When you start having closed door meetings resulting in the firings of elected officials and the public is not aware that there is a problem. These are the kind of things we have seen throughout history, regardless of whether it's on the local, the state, or the federal level, where government officials begin to take public interest and use it for their own purposes without informing the public. This is how we get situations such as with the insurrection, and we see some of the backdoor dealings now starting to finally come into light. That's how you get a situation when the government starts to work in deeper detail. The COINTELPRO. You can talk about, for example, the quote unquote war on drugs, which really was something which we found out later on was a lie. When we find that our government is trying to operate under a cloak of darkness and hide, one way or another, that truth is going to come out to light. So we applaud Makaila Keys, we applaud Olivia Morris, we applaud the parents, we applaud the supporters, we applaud those who are standing up for her and speaking out her case, all those who came out wearing their gold and representing neighborhood spots, representing those who want to basically say this: we are holding our board members, we are holding our government accountable. And so we spoke with Makaila and Olivia afterwards, and I just want to kind of read some of the quotes that they expressed with us after the trial. And one thing that Makaila really talked about was that she said that she was glad that it was made known that she was going to be affected by this situation. And it said it solidified her point to speak. It solidified what she was doing. And then we asked about, how was she able to deal with some of the unfortunate vitriol that's come on through social media and other sites, and in the way people have expressed their displeasure with the fact that she's made this case, because people point out, well, you had some of the other school board members, such as Cole and Don Shelley and others, be a part of that. But the fact is that this closed door meeting was strictly with the respondents in question. But we asked Makaila about that, and here's what she invited, and just showing the grace that she has throughout this entire situation. And go on our previous episodes where we had the interview with Makaila, and when she spoke out to the school board, and you can see the leadership in which she spoke out and the boldness to take on a school board that, quite frankly, has had a myriad of issues over the past several months. And she talked about what that meant and about how she dealt with it. And she basically said this: she said, I invite those who don't support me to come and lend me an ear. Look at the facts. She was talking about the fact that she's opening the door for conversation. And yes, we live in a world where there's disagreement, and that's okay. That's the beautiful part about having free speech. Living in a country like America where we can openly have discourse about things we fundamentally may disagree with. There are a lot of people that I am friends with, but I may disagree with them politically. I may disagree with them on some certain social issues. But the fact of the matter is this, is that she was in very humbly and was willing. And I think that's one of the reasons that she was chosen, because she has this humility and a servant's heart and be able to speak out with a boldness to stand for what she believes in. And she stated, for those who do disagree, lend an ear. I think sometimes some of the comments that have been said, like I always say, always listen with a third ear, watch with a third eye. It knows that some of those statements aren't just statements that's being said by individuals, but it's being said by people behind the scenes, people pulling the strings. And so Makaila was just opening the door for further conversation and inviting people to come out. They're going to have the next school board meeting on April 11th, and hopefully there'll be more discourse. There'll be more discussion. We live in a world now, and social media has exacerbated this far too often, where people feel they can say what they want to say and feel that they don't need to disagree, or if anyone disagrees, they'll be quick to block them or quick to retweet them and call them out. But whatever happened to, hey, let's sit down and let's talk about these things. May not come to an agreement, but come to an understanding. Or talk also with, let's say, Olivia Morris from Riverbend High School, and she also had such boldness and to stand. And it was such a joy. She said how nervous she was when she went to the trial because she didn't know what was going to happen. But as the moment started to come to realization that, hey, they're going to make this trial, that the judge is going to deny the demur of the defense. And what she said was, I know what I'm saying is true. And I was so glad to have an opportunity to be here. See, when democracy works, when our justice system works, it gives hope. It allows our young people to understand and know not to give up the fight, stand up for what they believe. And by doing so, their voices will be heard. It's like I often tell people now, revolutions are started by the young. You go back to the civil rights fights in the 1970s. Let's just think about the young lawyers in upstate New York, the Puerto Rican civil rights leaders, and how so many other people throughout time, SNCC and other publications. You think of Black Lives Matter more recently, how we've seen change. It's not because of young people saying things have to be different. We cannot go with the status quo. So credit to Makaila Keys, Olivia Morris, for all those, Richard Edwards, Jenna Edwards, for all those who are standing up for what they believe in. That this will create change for the better, because our schools deserve it. March is Women's History Month. And we have had a chance, if you've gone on to our PD16 Perspective site and you've seen that there's maybe the Macaroni Kid blogs that Jenna has written, that you've seen many women who have been honored within the local PD16 district and what they've done, their contributions to society. And so many of them who are making a difference, not only in whether it's Fredericksburg, Stafford, Spotsylvania that's past, but what they're doing for the future. And what we've also seen is just the outpouring of support from young women who are now seeing, hey, I can follow in their footsteps. I can pick up the torch and move on from there and do what is necessary so that my voice be heard, so I can be an impact in the community. However, there's another arena in which women are still dealing with struggles. And we talk about it. There was a documentary watching the other day, and it was on PBS, and it talked about pioneers in skirts, and about the challenges that women face in the executive boardrooms and trying to make a difference in corporate America. But there's still a challenge with women, especially when it comes to those who serve in our armed forces. I want to read a quote here, and hope not to mess her name. Her name is Anu Bhagwati. She was a former company commander and a Marine and executive director of Serving Women's Action Network. It's a veterans advocacy group And she said there's still a disturbing issue that there's a pattern in the military using psychiatric diagnosis to get rid of women who report sexual assaults. Now, those who may know our history in the PW perspective, we report extensively on Vanessa Guillen, the woman who was sadly murdered, after reporting that was a sexual assault. And in the case we've seen all the time, we've seen it in movies, we've seen it in just popular media. We've seen situations in which women in the military have been sexually assaulted. And what happens as a result is either gets often not reported, or they get slammed with the scarlet letter, or now in this case are still being quickly dismissed. Military records show the personality disorder diagnosis is being used disproportionately on women. I'm going to read these stats. Shout out to Yale Law School's Veteran Legal Services Clinic. Under a FOIA request, in the Army, 16% of all soldiers are women, but females constitute 24% of all personality disorder discharges. In the Air Force, women make up 21% of the ranks, but 35% of personality order discharges. And in the Navy, 17% of sailors are women and 26% of personality disorder charges. And the Marines, 7% of the Corps represented by women and 14% of personality disorder discharges. And those reflect how many women have reported actual sexual assault. And see, there are other issues with this as well, because it carries a heavy financial burden. They don't receive benefits. Those victims of sexual assault with personality discharges don't receive benefit from Department of Veterans Affairs to help with their trauma. Yes, they can still apply for benefits, but consider an uphill battle to get awarded what they deserve. It's been a consistent battle, and thanks to advocacy groups such as the Service Women Actions Network, making it possible to give women a voice who have been sexually assaulted. And while some of them are being able to function, others are not. And the battles that they have to deal with, on top of having to deal with the trauma, is something that should not be. So credit to those advocacy groups that are speaking out for women, giving them a voice, making sure that women who are victims of this horrific crime are given another opportunity to make it through. And the quote of the statement is, and why it's so important, to quote J.M. Storm here: "Truth is that all veterans pay with their lives. Some pay at once, but others pay over a lifetime." Even though Women's History Month is only 31 days in March, there are many women who are battling today, many women who are going through trauma on a continuous basis. And support these advocacy groups, support these women. They have a fighting chance to not only heal, but get another opportunity. Well, we thought we would end this week's show on some good news. And for many businesses, especially as we're transitioning out of pandemic, not there yet, but for many businesses, there's still that uphill battle. Because of the Great Resignation, several business people have moved on, created their own businesses, and took the leap of faith. And often they'll get the opportunity to still connect, because now we're not always connecting on Zoom anymore. Now people are starting to see each other in person. They're able to meet, but there's still some of those who are still going through that challenge. Like, who can I talk to? Who can I be part of? Well, in Fredericksburg, this upcoming Friday, you're going to get an opportunity to do so. The Virginia Black Business Directory, which has been just extraordinarily supportive, and being that deposit of resources, being that one-stop shop for Black and brown startup businesses within the PD16 area, that is giving an opportunity for people to meet up. And so this upcoming Friday from 6 p.m. to 10 o'clock p.m., they're having the spring network session. It's going to be taking place on 1224 Powhatan Road in Fredericksburg. That's 1224 Powhatan Road in Fredericksburg. If you're a member, of course, it's free. Non-members have to pay $15. If you like to register at events@vabbd.com. And read that one more time. Register at events@vabbd.com. And make sure you come out and be a part of it. There's a great opportunity to connect with great people, and an opportunity to help your business grow. And what better way, especially with spring coming forth, that opportunity to meet with other individuals. And you never know, that could be a gateway for other businesses, because business, entrepreneurs support one another. Well, that is it for this week's edition of the PD16 Perspective. I am John Reid. I thank the LCPM Network for making this all possible, and for you, the viewers, for letting your voices be heard. So drop us a line. Let us know what topics you want us to discuss in the PD16 area, because there's so many stories, and we want to make sure that you're getting the opportunity to have your voice heard. If you have a business or something you're doing, it's could be, it's not a small or large, no matter the story. We want to make sure your voice is being heard. So go on our PD16 Perspective Facebook page and just drop us a line, send us a message, say, hey, I have an idea for a story, or I want to be a part of something. I want to let people know about this. And please, we want to hear from you. We want to make sure that your story doesn't remain hidden in the dark. And again, no matter how small, how large, we want to hear your voice. This is John Reid, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy your week. Continue to be a voice in the community.